Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Carmine Sabia for Explain America, and Marco Rubio has some very frightening news. And, well, one country better wake up and pay attention. Before we get started, please make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Those little things really help us out, and they help our channel continue to grow. And if you're not watching us on YouTube, please check that address in the lower right-hand corner. It's youtube.com/@ExplainAmerica. And hit subscribe absolutely free. It really helps us out. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was interviewed by Megyn Kelly when the subject of Greenland came up. And what Marco Rubio said is Donald Trump is not joking. This is not a joke. He would prefer to purchase Greenland. But Denmark is incapable of protecting it from China. And we're not just going to protect it for free. So we have a stalemate. We need to protect it because China needs an Arctic presence. They're looking at Greenland. So while the media tells you that it's silly, it's not silly. I'm not going to ballyhoo the point. I want you to actually listen to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and let him explain it to you. And then you'll understand it and you can tell your friends and they'll understand it because it actually makes sense. It takes just a few minutes to listen to him. He lays out the case and he does say, no, military force is not off the table. Take a listen and let me know what you think in the comments.
How does Greenland fit into all of this?
Well, the Arctic, which has gotten very little attention, but the Arctic Circle and the Arctic region is going to become critical for shipping lanes, for how do you get some of this energy that's going to be produced under President Trump. These energies rely on shipping lanes. The Arctic is some of the most valuable shipping lanes in the world. As some of the ice is melting, it's become more and more navigable. We need to be able to defend that. So if you project what the Chinese have done, it is just a matter of time before, because they are not an Arctic power. They do not have an Arctic presence. So they need to be able to have somewhere that they can stage from. And it is completely realistic to believe that the Chinese will eventually, maybe even in the short term, try to do in Greenland what they have done at the Panama Canal and in other places. And that is install facilities that give them access to the Arctic with the cover of a Chinese company, but that in reality serve a dual purpose, that in a moment of conflict, they could send naval vessels to that facility and operate from there. And that is completely unacceptable to the national security of the world and to the security of the world and the national security of the United States. So the question becomes, if the Chinese begin to threaten Greenland, do we really trust that that is not a place where those deals are going to be made? Do we really trust that that is not a place where they would not intervene?
You don't think Denmark would stop them?
I think that's been the president's point, and that is that Denmark can't stop them. They would rely on the United States to do so. And so his point is, if the United States is on the hook to provide, as we are now, we have a defense agreement with them to protect Greenland if it comes under assault. If we're already on the hook for having to do that, then we might as well have more control over what happens there. And so I know it's a delicate topic for Denmark, but it's, again, a national interest item for the United States.
So there was a conference call between President Trump and the Danish Prime Minister. It apparently didn't go very well. Reportedly involved some sort of a meltdown on the Prime Minister's part. They don't want to give it up. So what options does that leave us? Because President Trump did not rule out economic or potentially military use.
Well, I think President Trump's, what he has said publicly is he wants to buy it. He wants to pay for it. And how we worked on something like that, how something like that is approached, obviously is probably done better in the appropriate forums. A lot of the stuff is done publicly, and it's not helpful because it puts the other side in a tough spot domestically. So those conversations are going to happen. But this is not a joke. Like what he is saying is pretty accurate. People don't talk about it for years. This is not about acquiring land for the purpose of acquiring land. This is in our national interest, and it needs to be solved. President Trump's put out there what he intends to do, which is to purchase it. I wasn't privy to that phone call, but I imagine the phone call went the way a lot of these phone calls go, and that is he just speaks bluntly and frankly with people. And ultimately, I think diplomacy in many cases works better when you're straightforward as opposed to using platitudes and language that translates to nothing.
So when President Trump said he might use economic or military coercion, what does that mean? What is military coercion?
I don't remember him saying military coercion.
He did.
Think he was asked, what would you rule out?
Would you rule it out?
Right. I don't think he's in the... He also brings to
this... He said, no, I won't rule it out.
Because he brings to this is a businessman who's involved in politics. not a politician involved in politics. So he approaches these issues from a transactional business point of view. So he is not going to begin what he views as a negotiation or a conversation by taking
anything
leverage off the table.
Okay.
And that's a tactic that's used all the time in business. It's being applied to foreign policy, and I think to great effect in the first term. I mean, you look at the Abraham Accords, and the Democrats mocked the Abraham Accords when they were made. And then by the end of the Biden administration, they became the linchpin of a lot of what we're hoping to build on. That never would have happened had there not been a transactional approach. You look at what his envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, has achieved. The Biden administration asked Witkoff. They asked for him to be involved in these conversations. He has brought a businessman's approach to a very delicate and intractable foreign policy challenge and delivered a ceasefire that obviously is tenuous and has long-term challenges to it. But there are hostages being released every day. That didn't happen for over a year and a half until he became involved. And that's the president's envoy and very close friend who's brought the same kind of business approach to some of these challenges.
So let's look forward 4 years. Does the U.S. own Greenland?
We'll see. I mean, obviously that's the president's priority, and he has made that point. I think that what I can tell you about 4 years without getting into specifics, because we're not in a position yet to discuss exactly how we'll proceed tactically. What I think you can rest assured of is that 4 years from now, our interest in the Arctic will be more secure. Our interest in the Panama Canal will be more secure. Our partnerships in the Western Hemisphere will be stronger. We need to understand a lot of these countries in Central America, they're not destination sites. They are countries that migrants come through, and that these human trafficking rings run people through. It creates tremendous instability for these countries at a tremendous cost as well. They would welcome help in stopping that migration corridor from continuing because it's destabilizing their countries. So I think we're going to have a Western Hemisphere that's more secure, and our national interest in all parts of the world, that's the goal, are going to be more secure from the Arctic to Central America to even Africa and certainly the Indo-Pacific.